Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name's Stephen Cinnamon. I'm in a meetup group called the UK Astral Projection Forum, and I'm really pleased to have the author, researcher, metaphysical expert Robert Bruce with us this afternoon on a return visit of a two-part session. We're going to look at his encounters with other beings, whether it be angels, spirits, masters, and look at other phenomena. Hopefully, many of you will be able to pose questions for us. We've got some advanced questions that we will discuss. And with little ado, I'm going to bring Robert straight in, and hopefully he'll be able to speak to us very soon. So, Robert, are you there? Okay, we seem to have lost Robert's connection, so hopefully he'll come back in a minute. We've had some technical problems yesterday and some technical problems today. As soon as he's online, I'll bring him into the conversation.
He should be back.
There we are, we're back now. So I'm going to bring Robert straight into us. Robert, thank you for joining us. You're going to be straight up online now. And please introduce yourself, perhaps tell our audience, some of the people that weren't able to join us yesterday will be joining us today. So it'd be really nice maybe if you could just talk a little bit about yourself and maybe what brings you here today. Maybe look at the subject a little bit.
Well, my name is Robert Bruce, and I'm here because I'm best buddies with Stephen, and we go back quite a long way. And I've written several books, including the Astral Dynamics, a book called Energy Work, Mastering Astral Projection, and the Practical Psychic Self-Defense Handbook. And Stephen and I get together every now and then, and we do these group talks, and we've been experimenting with Google Hangouts for a while now, and we're getting the bugs out of it. But every time we get to do a presentation, we get gremlins in our machines, and it's like inexplicable things happening.
Yeah, you're telling me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm using my laptop at the moment, and I've got a beautiful i7 computer sitting behind it, which suddenly decided the video camera and microphone wasn't going to work. It broke down about half an hour ago. And yeah, and network issues and things like that. But we're here, and everything seems to be stable at the moment.
It's interesting. Your fellow author, Anthony Peake, based in England. Anthony, I'm pleased to say, is a friend of mine, and has done events with the Astral Projection Forum in London. He describes these things as archons, and I've seen him also have similar problems, especially when he's about to do an event or presentation. I don't know what it is. Maybe you can enlighten us, because we're looking at dealing with spirits, masters, and other phenomena. Don't know if it is phenomena. Don't know if it's simply our inability to deal with modern technology. What do you think? What can you suggest for us, Robert?
Well, I'm an advanced user. I cut my teeth on Unix going back to like 1990, something or other, when we were using computers that had a black screen with a C colon greater than sign blinking in the corner. And you know, that's a long time ago. So, but yeah, negative type entities and mischievous spirits will mess with electronic devices. They're very good at electrical devices, electronic devices. And I've proven this time and time again. An example of this, I wish I'd taken a photograph of it, but I did have witnesses. Going back several years ago, when I was writing a book called Practical Psychic Self-Defense. Now, I had to go to great lengths to protect that manuscript, because the computer would die, the files would become corrupt. It was like enormous problems. I carried a copy of the book on a floppy disk in my pocket both of my sisters had copies of these discs in their underwear drawers in their respective houses. And at one point, I actually had to recover my document from one of my sisters because all other copies died in the pocket. The copy in my pocket was corrupt. And to cap it all off, just as I'd finished the book, I had an incident at my house where we had a massive negative entity type attack on my eldest son at the time. And after I'd helped him by applying some of my countermeasures, he was in a serious way. After that happened, I went back to my computer and I had a brand new, 2 weeks old, 17-inch Philips CRT monitor, and burned into the screen so darkly that you could not see the desktop below it was the imprint of a face, a head, and it almost filled the screen about the size of a human head, and you could see the outline of the neck and the little ears and two little horns coming out of where the head would be, as if somebody had put their head into the computer and had burned like a dark green. You get a similar effect if you have a CRT monitor or television. If you get a magnet and you touch it in the screen and draw over the screen, you'll find you'll get a dark green mist appear on the screen. And it was so dark, as I say, you couldn't see the desktop beneath it. And I had to degauss the screen with a degaussing wand several times before I could use the computer again. So amazing.
Were you able to associate that with anything? I'm not sure whether you can discuss this or not in this conversation, but were you able to determine if there actually was something going on? Were you able to do any further investigations, whether there were phenomena or something else around your vicinity around that time? And if so, what if you can share that, what were your feelings on that?
All of the issues were about the book I was writing at the time. Now, publishing that with the practical countermeasures in there, which are unlike any other countermeasures you'll find. I mean, when a person is under an intense psychic attack of any kind, you're often so disturbed in the mind, you cannot read and comprehend one paragraph in the book, let alone sit down and read page after page and try to do complex visualizations and things. You can't do it if you're under attack. It's great in theory, but if you're actually under attack, you're incapable of doing that. So my countermeasures revolve around electrical earthing, running water, and things like that. I'll give an example. If you come under a major attack now, which is, as I say, debilitating, cold shivers running through you, you can barely walk, your mind is polluted and unhinged and racing. If you go and jump in the shower, it stops instantly. The instant you get in the shower. And this is, now, it may start up again, and usually will. If you step out of the shower, after a minute, it will start up again. It's like whatever it is waiting for you. But negative entities, in my experience, the earthbound type ones, earth element types, which is 99% of the problem for human beings because we're earth beings, and these spirits are literally bound to the surface of the earth. And if you get into a shower, you expose yourself to a very, very strong electrical earth going all the way through the piping back to the dam. Now, this doesn't work in a bathtub unless the water's running because a bathtub is insulating. You need to be electrically earth to the planet. And this will stop the strongest attack in its tracks. Now, this is why you will find a lot of people that have psychotic episodes, psychotic breaks, depressive or whatever, you will often find them in the shower. And I've talked to a lot of people that has happened to, and they may have been in the shower for 2 days because they work out very, very quickly. When we're in distress, a human being in crisis will often run for water, just like an elephant. And people go in the shower and they find all the problems stop and they feel normal again. But when they get out of the shower, it all starts up again. And you very quickly work out that in the shower, you'll find out of the shower there's stuff happening you can't control. So you'll often find people when the ambulance comes to get them, they're in the shower still. they may have slept in there with an umbrella or a raincoat or something. It's quite common. And that's the reason why, is because they're suffering a negative type attack. Anyway, this is not the topic for
Well, actually,
tonight.
Robert,
It
this
is
is excellent
interesting.
because we dealt with a lot to do with spiritual masters, to some extent spirits. We looked at spiritual evolution and how consciousness can manifest itself in human beings and animals and so forth yesterday. So this actually is bang on topic. And I think your audience will value this just as much as the conversation yesterday. So I'm interested in, and I've heard this story before, how you found out that water worked as a countermeasure. Maybe you could help some of the audience who are not sure what a countermeasure is, because it's quite a specialized term. Maybe start off describing what a countermeasure is, and then explain how you came about finding out that water worked as a countermeasure.
I came across this information through personal experience over several years, and it was several years before I actually got it. The penny dropped. My first experience with this was when I became possessed myself by quite a nasty demon, but definitely demonic. I saw it, I knew it, I'd encountered it, and it was of the demonic variety. It looked very much like the entity Gollum out of Lord of the Rings. It's Lord of the Rings, isn't it? Gollum, that little tormented creature was precious, the ring. That's the one. And looked almost identical to him, but he had little budding horns about that long coming out of his head. Now, I became possessed by while I was giving healing to a 5-year-old boy that was suffering from chronic possession issues. Here's a child of 5 who could barely talk. He had terrible speech impediment, and he would start talking in a grown man's deep voice with perfect diction. At times, things would levitate around him. A very serious case indeed. And at the time, I didn't know enough to do an exorcism really, or what that was. So as a long-term healer, I used healing to try and help him, healing and prayer. That's what I was doing. And in a situation like that, you would probably try to do the same thing to help somebody. And at the point now, having a bit of clairvoyance and deeply relaxed in the evening with this boy and his mother watching, I was trying to help him. I could see this entity walking around the room and what it was doing, and I was trying to, at the time, bring down the light, praying for help and angels, anything you could think of. And nothing was working, but I could see the entity, and so could the boy, because I watched his eyes following it. And cut long story short, a thought just popped into my head telepathically. And a telepathic thought, when it appears in your head, is just like if I said to you something like, here is a cheese sandwich. Now, how you feel after I finish saying those words, after I finish the last word, you have the information in your mind. Here is a cheese sandwich. And in your mind, you know what I've just said. But imagine if you just get that part without the words being said. You know it was a cheese sandwich. And I got the words in my head and I just said them. And I said, in desperation, take me and leave the child. And I didn't know I was being set up at the time. It was obvious. But the instant I said that, it did. It attacked me, paralyzed me, I could say tortured me, and it was quite messy for about 30 minutes, and then I recovered from that and wondered what the hell that was. Fortunately, the boy and the mother didn't know what was going on because I just fell out of my chair and lay on the floor, twitching a bit. And I thought I didn't know what had happened then, but I'd been hit in the mouth, in the lower right lip. At the instant I said those words, it was like being hit by a boxer. And this is important. Now, a big swelling came up there, and over the next few days, that hardened into a bristly lump about the size of a shelled peanut, a bristly sort of lump there. And that is, if you do the research, is what they call stigmata diabolis, which is the devil's mark, various interpretations. But if you remember back to the witch hunts, the primary evidence for indicting a witch was, indicting a witch was a physical search of the body, a very thorough search, looking for a lump that if they pierced it with a needle, it neither bled nor hurt. And that is, of course, a bristly type lump, a tumor type lump, which is like bristle. And, you know, it doesn't hurt, has no nerve endings in there, and it doesn't bleed. Now, after that, about a week later, I had my first loss of control, where my hand reached out, grabbed a glass, and threw it against the wall. A complex action, grabbing something, throwing it against the wall. And it was like, I knew I was in trouble then, because I didn't do that. You know, my arm did it on its own. And the next day, I walked past my beloved Labrador blue boy, and my foot went out and kicked him. Poor little doggy. And things like that started happening. It got progressively worse by the day, to the point where I had to, cut a long story short, I had to move out into my mother's old house and stay there alone. And I knew I was a dead man, because I knew what had happened. I knew this was progressive possession happening very rapidly. Now, you do not survive full-blown demonic possession alone. I've never heard of a case of that happening. Now, I went to, people might say, why didn't you go to healers and things like that? I went to several healers and spiritual teachers in my local area, because from the time this happened to where I was now had been about a month. And I've been to everybody I could find. Now, they gave me a lot of promises, and I deal with people in this situation now. I've seen literally hundreds of people.
Robert, what sort of age were you then?
Nobody could help.
Sorry to interrupt you, Robert. How long ago was this? Were you a younger man then?
Yes, this was about, when was it? About 27 years ago.
Wow.
So it was a long time ago. But at the time, I was put into a position, and there's a beauty in this story if you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I was left in a situation where I knew what was happening. Nobody could help me. As I said, when I approached these healers and teachers, once they discovered pretty quickly that it was a genuine problem, a genuine like possession problem ongoing, they would ask me to leave and would not return my calls. Nobody would help me, because in the New Age movement, the fundamental of that seems to be, for like 95% of healers and teachers out there, is that like attracts like. And if you have a problem like that, it's because you had bad thoughts in your head or done bad things and you've attracted it. But my case against that, which blows it out of the water, is what sort of bad thoughts can a 6-month-old baby have of pre-language age? Now, I've helped many children over the years, and I've worked for many years with children, because children are easier to work with than adults, and you can help them more. Adults are very difficult because the compliance level with countermeasures is quite low. With children, you can apply them, and it's quite effective, very, very helpful. But now, in the situation where my situation was getting really dire, and I wouldn't trust myself to drive a car because of episodes with, almost turning head-on into a truck sort of thing. You stop driving pretty quickly after you battle with yourself over things like that, losing control of your arms and things. And I was faced with a choice, and this was a time, about this time of year, late November, early December, and at this particular night we had a thunderstorm, and it was raining heavily and lightning. Now I knew then, and I knew I had to connect with the greater reality now, or I would die. Because I had 3 choices. I could kill myself. I win by default. I haven't hurt anybody. 2, I could turn myself into a hospital and get heavily medicated up for the rest of my natural life. Or the third thing I could do is to do what I actually believed in, and actually connect with my higher self and step into the greater reality. and life had put me into this situation. I fully understand it now, what happened and why. And as I said, there's a beauty in the pattern for what I've always wanted to do and had planned to do, and now life has given me the opportunity to walk the talk, and really, which would allow me to do what I wanted to do later in life. And trying to connect right now is very, very difficult because I didn't know what I was doing. So I made a promise to myself, okay, I'll clear my mind, and the next thought that comes into my head, no matter how crazy it is, I'll do it. I promise. I have no option. And then this thought came into my mind. I'm sort of dancing with it. I am going to go out into the storm and find a message. Okay, I'll do that. So I put on a light jacket and walked out into the night and walked out into the bush. And it was dark and thundery and raining heavily. I was drenched to the skin pretty quickly. And I was finding my way by lightning strikes. Now, about 30 minutes later, I was a couple of miles from my place by then in the bush, in the forest, as you would call it over there. And I was getting freezing cold. I was getting hypothermic because of the wind. It's quite a strong wind in the water. So I started sort of jogging and moving a bit to warm myself up. And I ran headfirst into a tree, nearly knocked myself unconscious. And I bounced back off the tree and rolled into a ditch full of muddy water and rubbish. Now, when I clawed my way back out of the ditch, there was a big flash of forked lightning. I looked down at myself, and there was a piece of newspaper stuck to my leg. And I thought, I'm going a little bit crazy here because I'm trying to work on a level I don't know how to work on. I'm trying to leave my logical, scientific brain behind and be in a more poetic frame of mind. So I grabbed that piece of paper, the message, and protected it, and went back to my home and carefully cleaned up that piece of paper. It was kind of burnt, and I could only make out a few words on it from some old advertisement on one side. The other side was a bit of a picture. I couldn't make out anything. And through the holes and the burn marks and that, it said, come to, and further down here it says, Jarrahdale Garden Nursery, nestled in the hills, potted plants from 295. And that's what it said. I should have photographed it. And I said, that's it. I know where I'm going. I'm going to Jarrahdale, which was about 100 kilometres from here, in fairly deep bush. So the next morning I went back home and got my very, very, very worried wife to help me. And so she wouldn't call the police or the hospital or anything. I acted like I knew what I was doing. And I grabbed a swag and water bottles and things like that, and some rough clothes and a blanket and a ground sheet, and I told her to drive me to Jarrahdale. And so we drove out there. And when we got there, we're going down the highway with these huge hills on the left. And she said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'll tell you when we get there," acting like I knew what I was doing to make her feel a bit of confidence in me. And then I saw it. From the top of one of these hills, I saw a big flash of light, very, very noticeable. And I thought, stop here. That's the sign and omen I'm looking for. I'm learning to follow the beat. I'm learning to follow life in a very shamanistic way. And she dropped me off there, and I almost killed myself getting up that hill. I was literally tripping over poisonous snakes on the way, and I clambered my way to the top. And then I found the source of the light. I found the holy Coca-Cola can laying on top of a big rock there, and it was like moving in the breeze, and that was what the underside of it was making the flash of light. Now, all of this sounds like coincidence and rubbish, but every single thing in here is connected together, and I would have died without them. They actually saved my life. They actually led me to freedom. And I spent a couple of days up there trying to connect and freezing at night and doing crazy things like I drew a big circle on the rock and lit some candles I had with me and stuff, and none of that worked. And the next day, about the third day I was there, I made a fatal mistake and I put my huge water bag, couple of canvas water bags, down on the rock. And it was hot weather now. It was like 100 degrees in the shade, very hot and dry. And overnight, the porous rock had leached the water out of my water bags. So the next day, I woke up to empty water bags. I had no water, and that brought me to a point whereby I could. I had a choice. I could either go back down to the road, which is a few miles behind me, bit of a struggle, but I could get there, or I could follow my heart and follow the signs. And in my mind, I drew a line here, and I made a decision. I will not take this thing back to my family, so it can start killing the neighbours or whatever it would have done. It was, it was a terrible thing, very, very nasty. And I decided very, very firmly, and you can't fake this decision, it's got to be genuine. Your higher self, which you would know. And I decided that, no, I wasn't going to go back, I'm going to stay here. And if I'm going to die, so be it, but I'm not going back. And at that moment, something changed. When I make that decision, there was like this change in the atmosphere. There was a very big energy around me, a divine sort of an energy accelerating. And it's like being in a gigantic church all of a sudden. And then, and I'm sitting there under a tree thinking that I might live through the day, but not tomorrow. And I was hoping that dying of dehydration wouldn't be too painful. But because I was determined to see this through. And then I learned another important lesson. I looked up at this cloudless sky, not a single cloud in the sky, this brilliant blue sky, and the sun beating down on me. And I yelled out to, I'm calling to the masters that I encountered a few months earlier when I first raised my Kundalini, which is part of the reason that led to this problem, because it destroyed my natural shielding. And so I'm learning this the hard way, which is scary and dangerous, but it's actually a very good way to learn. If you plan to teach something, you really need to know it inside and out, the good and the bad. Anyway, once I yelled out loudly. I've got a big sense of humour in myself. Hey, big guys, I could really use some help down here about now. And I was sort of laughing at that. But then the damnedest thing happened. A little cloud appeared in the sky about a kilometre above me and started out like a little thumbnail. It rapidly grew bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger into this cumulus, like darkish grey, very thick cloud, just on its own, hanging in the sky above me. And I watched this, and the cloud shaped itself into the exact shape of one of the masters I encountered earlier, which had this master was a large black-skinned man with broad features, and he had a massive turban, royal blue turban, encrusted with jewels on his head. And I recognized the head and the turban when it appeared, and then the shoulders and arms appeared, and a bow and arrow appeared in his hands with this beautiful cloud arrow and bow. And I'm watching in this, I'm gobsmacked, and I'm looking up at this beautiful figure in this bow and arrow, and I'm saying, what? I don't get it! I didn't get it. And then this thought appeared in my mind very strongly. And it said, Robert, what does an arrow do? And I raised my brain, I thought, an arrow, an arrow. An arrow points. And I grabbed a stick from beside me. I was sitting on the rock face there. And I held the stick up to line up with the arrow. And as I did that, the arrow and the bow and that disappeared, probably over about 10 seconds. Everything disappeared. And I took a bearing with the arrow, what the arrow was pointing towards, and I looked down in the valley before me, and a few kilometres away was where it was pointing to, in quite a big valley, and another hill the other side in front of me. And I'm looking at this drab, olive grey, brown sort of sunburnt environment, and I'm looking intensely at where this was pointing at, trying to, blink my eyes and take more, get it into focus better. I didn't know what I'm looking for. And then finally, by staring at it, leaving my eyes relaxed, I made out this faint green line, like a little snake, going through this rather heavy area of bush. And I thought, I'll be damned. And I thought maybe that's water, and which is what I desperately needed. So I went down the side of the hill, almost killing myself in the process and falling and that, but I made it down there. It's quite a big hill, a small mountain I was on. And I got down there and I walked in the same direction that I'd seen the thing. Again, I'm tripping over snakes and I'm exhausted. I'm carrying this real heavy pack full of books and stuff I thought I might need. No food, just I had water and books, and that's about it. And I walked through there for a couple of hours, very, very difficult going in chest-high scrub. And I finally found it, and I wouldn't have found it, you couldn't see it. I fell through the crust, and there was a little underground stream about that wide and about probably 3 feet deep, half a metre deep, and I literally fell in it, into the water, and there was about 6 inches of muddy water on the bottom, and that was like absolutely life-saving. Muddy water tastes really good when you're very, very thirsty. And now I had water, and I filled my water bags up again, and I thought, where shall I go? And I thought I'd follow the snake. It kind of reminded me of Kundalini, the way the snake was in the bush there. So I went back to the out of the heavy scrub and went down the side an easier way, and a few kilometres up that way, the stream, which actually was an underground stream, it surfaced briefly into a small pond about the size of my studio here, about probably 15 feet across and about 10 wide and about 6 inches deep. But with bulrushes around it. But in that area I found there was one area on the side going up the hill again where water was bubbling directly out of the ground. Now, that was, apart from being beautiful, fresh water, the best water I've ever tasted in my life. I'd also read somewhere, and I quickly pulled the book out and checked it, that using a telluric spring, they call it, which is a spring coming up out of the ground, had a powerful energy around it which can help with various things. Anyway, I made a camp about 80 yards up into the little pine forest which was starting there, and made a camp on the ground next to this burned out tree stump. And I stayed there for 2 days and 2 nights. And on the last morning I was there, I woke up in the morning, and I didn't know it then, but I was sleeping directly on top of an underground stream. This is what did the trick. I woke up about 5 a.m. just at the crack of dawn, and as you do when you're out camping, sleeping out in the open, and I decided to go down and get some water and make a cup of tea. We had a little campfire there. Now, I didn't have any food with me. I did bring some tea, and so I walked down to get some water. Now, I got about halfway down, and then the sun just popped up. The first rays of the sun hit me, as it does when it comes above the hills like that. And as the sun's rays hit me, this thing which was possessing me lifted off of me. And this thing in my mouth, this hard, gristly lump, exploded into 100 different pieces. I had a big hole in my lip, spitting out a bit of blood. But this thing had left me. I was completely released. And then, about 15 seconds later, it came back and attacked me. One of the most painful attacks I've ever had in my life. I got a broken rib, a couple of herniated discs, and torn muscles out of it. Very painful. Falling on the floor, screaming type painful. And then this only lasted about 10 seconds, and then it left completely, and it was gone for good. And after that, and I got my breath back, and I went down to the stream, and I took my clothes off, nobody around, miles out in the bush, and washed myself, and floated in this like 6 inches of water, and sort of taking it all in and making the adjustment. It was gone, but it wasn't just gone. I felt absolutely holy. I felt this divine energy pouring through me, and I felt absolutely wonderful. Now, I got out of the water after about half an hour and stood there in the sun to air dry myself. I didn't have a towel. And so nobody around, so it didn't matter. And then I noticed something strange, and I was wondering what it was. There were no flies. Now, from the time I'd stepped out of that car a few days earlier to begin this quest up the hill, I'd been attacked by several different kinds of vicious bush flies. Excuse my little dog. Really, these are really, really bad. I mean, they will bite through denim. If you've got a denim jeans, they'll land on you and bite through the denim jeans. It hurts, painful. So you spend all day swatting them away. I didn't bring any mesh with me, and you know they were quite a torment in their own. But now I'm standing on the edge of this little pond, air drying myself, and the flies aren't attacking me. And I looked around, and on the bulrushes and that, and I saw some of the flies there. And there were the big black ones, the little green meanies, and the red devils, I call them. I made up names for them. And they were just sitting there looking at me. And I picked up some of them, you know, running my fingers through the little reeds and things like that. And I had these little flies sitting in my hand, washing themselves, looking at me. And I felt this enormous love pouring out of me for these flies. And I stroked them like that, and they sort of looked up and smooched up to me. It was wonderful. But going from that, it wasn't just the flies, it was everything. I could pick up snakes. Snakes would come up to me and hug my leg. Foxes and rabbits, kangaroos, and wild pigs would come up to me for scratching under the chin and things like that, and give me rabbits would let me pick them up and cuddle them. And they wouldn't try to get down. It was like I was in a state of grace after this, totally pure inside and out. And for that day, nothing, not even a mosquito wouldn't land on me. And everything was friendly. And everything loved me. And, you know, it was completely, I felt like St. Francis of Assisi and the animals. And anyway, I stayed there that night. And this is quite a saga. I stayed there again that night, and I made myself a much more comfortable bed, and I'd got the tarpaulin and made a little tent thinking I'd sleep in there instead of just laying on the ground with a blanket over me like I've been doing. And now, when the sun went down, I had my fire going. I was going to, you know, sit there for a bit before I went to sleep. But as soon as the sun went down, hundreds of spirits came, all different types of spirits, and these were nature spirits. These were nature spirits, and I could tell because most of them were half animal, half human. So you have a big. You ever seen the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark? In that one of the final scenes there, where they're tied back to back against that post, and they open the ark, and all these spirits come out. You get these spirits flowing around, and sometimes they'll go through you and things like that, and they couldn't look at them. It was a bit like that. Although some of these spirits had the head and shoulders of Aboriginal elders with beards, and they may have the body of a kangaroo, and this would trail off into this smoky trail, and some of them were just like huge snakes, and there were hundreds of them. They were in the treetops, they were on the ground, they were everywhere. I was like 100% clairvoyant because of this experience. And they came down, and they were very powerful. They weren't evil, but they could be very dangerous, very powerful spirits. So I was very aware of them. But their presence, because they were coming so close, and some of them would sneak up behind me and go through me, and there was like this massive tingling going for me when that happened. And but I knew that these are spirits, you shouldn't mess with them, because, you know, they are what they are. They're not evil, but they are, you know, quite powerful spirits. Now, I spent the entire night building the fire up, dodging these spirits until dawn. They didn't let up until the first rays of light come up, and then they went back into the trees and into the ground and the bushes, wherever they came from. And they all disappeared, and it was over. And I call that my night of fear because I was terrified. I mean, I didn't know what these things were. I'd kind of guessed they were some kind of nature spirit, But when you confront, it's all right knowing about it. I'm sure you've all read about this sort of thing. But when you're face to face with it and it won't go away when you close your eyes or put your head under a pillow, it's still there. It's quite a different matter. It's very confronting.
It's really
And
interesting,
but
Robert, in sharing that experience, and I have heard that story before, and you've added little bits that I hadn't heard about, which made it really, really interesting. In that,
I think
and that's quite
these,
that really is an extreme experience. But how do we assure individuals who are dealing with unknown phenomena? How can we bring them confidence, a reassurance that they can be safe, whether it's an internally generated psychotic episode, whether it is actually phenomena or not, and how can we support those people? What advice do you give them?
first thing, you absolutely must, everybody must read my book on this. It is called The Practical Psychic Self-Defense Handbook. I give the story in there in brief and a lot of countermeasures. Now, countermeasures are like the running water thing, things you can apply to keep yourself safe or to drain if you get attached to it or attacked by a negative entity or another person, psychic attack. There is a lot you can do about it. Now, one of the things with this sort of thing is it's like disease diagnosis. Early diagnosis, you can do something about it very quickly and it's not going to be a problem. But if you leave something like that too long and try and deal with it without getting rid of it, then it will infiltrate your chakra system and it becomes a much, much more difficult problem to get rid of. In the early stages, in the first few days of a major attack there, anything, even a major attack, is quite simple to get rid of. You can buy, for example, electrically earthed bed sheets, which is part of the grounding, earthing phenomena. You may have heard of this. And you can buy them online quite inexpensively, and it's a bed sheet that goes over the bottom half of your bed, and it has copper and silver threads woven into it, very fine. You can't feel it, it's just like linen. But you connect that to a cable and you plug it into your power outlet, and it is wired up only to the earthing pin, the round one in England. And or you can connect it to a metal water pipe or put a stake in outside in the ground. It's very, very safe, but there's marvelous health properties. And this is one of the things here. Human beings are meant to be in connection with the earth, electrically connected to the earth, bare feet, walking on the land sort of thing. But in the modern world, we wear insulated shoes, we walk on insulated floors and drive insulated cars. And the only time we're really in contact with the planet is when we're in the shower. Even in a bathtub, you're not connected. So when you're washing your hands, you're connected. Now, it's scientifically known there is a flow of electrons between the human being and the planet when you are electrically in contact with the planet, when you're earthed. And these cells of our body depend upon this for their integrity, for this flow of electrons, which affect the electrical fields which are around every cell in your body. Now, I speculate, it makes a lot of sense that our natural shielding is dependent upon this flow of electrons. So that if you are electron depleted in this way, your natural shielding is going to be much, much weaker. It won't completely disappear unless you maybe spend a long time in space, but it won't. But it's severely weakened. So there is an awful lot you can do about it. Another issue that comes up, I deal with all these things in the book, the aspect of permission is important here as well. If you note at the beginning of the experience, I gave permission. I said, take me and leave the child, and it did. I knew that was a setup, was suggested, but given what I planned to do as a healer and an exorcist and helping people to help the world by retrieving real metaphysical spiritual knowledge. That's always been my plan ever since I was a teenager, to retrieve the actual truth as opposed to truth that we choose to believe in. There's a big difference. It's like the laws of physics as compared to what we want the world to be like. We may want to believe in, lots of other things which physics don't include, but you still can't get away from physics. You can't get away from gravity that easily. So it's kind of like that, and the understanding of this is important. Now, I gave permission for this to happen to my higher self. My higher self was connected there, and it instantly, your higher self controls all of your natural shielding as well. It can block things out. Your natural shielding is, you could say, based on physics. It's like your physical body. But that level of, you could say, possession or psychic attack there is a deep spiritual matter. And my higher self decided to allow me to experience this. And that's an important point there. I would not change a thing about what has happened to me in the past, because I learned so much from this. Now, over the years, I was exposed to other incidences where, drugs do also reduce natural shielding, any sort of a drug, including the shamanic type drugs. And this is part of the reason why they work. You remove this natural shielding, you expose yourself to the greater reality for short periods of time. Yeah.
That's really interesting, Rob. And we've got a couple of related questions coming up in a second that have been posted in advance. Can I say to any of our audience that are with us live that you can post questions within Google+. If you join the Hangout, you can post questions. I'll be monitoring and looking for questions ongoing. If anyone's any questions that are watching on YouTube after we've completed the live event, please send through the questions either on YouTube or in Google+, or you can send them to myself. My email address is stephen@astralprojectionforum.co.uk, and I'll make sure I forward those on to Robert, and I'm sure he'd be pleased to receive your thoughts on this anyway. Robert, first question I've got comes from a young lady, member of our meetup group in London, and pretty simple question, but it's a big question, and you've in part answered this. And she says, this relates to, of course, different types of spiritual beings, and she says, how best to deal with the nasty ones? Maybe 2 or 3 thoughts on that.
The nasty spirits.
The nasty spirits.
Again, look, absolutely, my book is required reading. You can get it for a few dollars as an ebook, a download. Everything you need to know to protect yourself is in there. Now, a lot of the more commonly known countermeasures and protective things are very, very limited in their ability to protect you. A lot of it depends upon beliefs, and it also can take years of practice to gain the visualization skills and abilities in that level where you can actually use that to protect yourself. And again, remember what I said, when you do come under a major attack, your mind is so destabilized you can't focus. So this is why I put a lot of emphasis on my practical countermeasures. I mean, I also use things like incense and music and sound, and there's lots of different things, and certain substances and ointments and that, which are very, very easy and very, very practical to use. And it's not any one thing, it's different combinations of these things will repel different types of entities. But you need the understanding that the book will impart on you, because most of the modern New Age countermeasures used are not effective. Religious countermeasures, prayers and things like that, they don't work. Not when you're faced with an actual serious negative entity. They laugh at you. Now, I'm sure prayers and things can be made to work if your level of faith is up to an insane level. I'm sure they may help you, but that sort of knowledge and acumen can't be passed on. It's like passing on spiritual grace. You can't just learn that from a book. It's something that you earn. And even then, it may be you could say, your higher self is planned, God's plan for you to experience certain things. And when you know practical countermeasures that absolutely work, like running water, They're very powerful. If you don't use them, that's kind of a test. It's kind of a test all in itself until you actually, try them.
Quick question of my own, if that's okay, Robert.
Yeah.
We right at the offset of today's event and a little bit yesterday's event with some technical problems coming online. Now, whether they were phenomena related or just purely synchronicity, we don't know. Doesn't matter. We're online now. And you said that when you were preparing practical psychic self-defense, you had something was trying to prevent you from getting the book produced in the first place. Now, I'm probably putting a torch to this a little bit by saying if someone takes an interest in psychic self-defense, are they bringing the issues on board by taking the interest? If someone doesn't take an interest and they live a very grounded life, are they protected? Or is it just each individual's life is as it is and it's their journey and things will change as they change? Or something else?
I'll stop you there. Yeah, very good question, Stephen. The learning practical psychic countermeasures, things that you can do, practical things like a shower, banging saucepans together, burning a lot of incense. You need a lot to make a difference. Various things you can do. I have to relate that to that question there is based upon like attracts like, which I strongly disagree with in this.
Right.
And I'm willing to debate at any time. It's like the way it's been taken in the New Age movement is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, that develops paranoia, doesn't it, Robert? Yeah. I
mean, how can a 6-month-old baby attract the spirit of an alcoholic? How? 6-month-old baby from a very good home, not a really good, clean home where the parents don't even drink or smoke. I mean, a good home, clean, and a child is under massive attack. There's reasons here, but I can liken learning this, as you say, you take an interest in this, the paranormal takes an interest in you. There is something to that. But when it comes to countermeasures, I can line that up with learning first aid. Going and taking a first aid course and learning how to stop an artery or to do CPR and resuscitate somebody to start their heart up again, will learning first aid and taking a St. John's ambulance course or Royal Life, whatever it is course there, will that attract injured and dying people to you? Because that is exactly the same. Now, the answer to the first aid question is obviously not, but according to New Age theory, you are focusing on how to treat injuries. You should be attracting injuries and people having heart attacks to you. But that is not the case. Anecdotal evidence proves that that is ridiculous. It's the same with practical psychic self-defense. Now, as for the question of taking an interest in the paranormal, and the paranormal takes an interest in you, absolutely yes. That is true. And I'll tell you how that works. Most human beings are cut off from the greater reality, the paranormal. Source of all paranormal, the greater reality is a part of that. Now, normally, we human beings, let's say they disbelieve in things and they don't even go to church or anything, have no spiritual belief, don't believe in life after death or fairies or ghosts or spirits or angels or anything like that. Now, people like that, their connection with the greater reality is through the laws of physics. This is the default setting. You come down to the default setting, which is physics, nature, the things that work in nature, like, that happen to you in nature, which is like the same thing in every other animal on the planet, is their relationship to the greater reality is like that. Now, when you start taking a direct interest and reading books in and thinking about and talking about the paranormal, you're talking about the greater reality. You're taking an interest in angels and spirits and healing and energy work and even the darker side, poltergeists, negative entities and things like that. You take an interest in all that, and that brings you closer to the greater reality. The greater reality, it's like you are tuning into the greater spiritual reality. And therefore, your relationship is no longer just with physics. Your relationship becomes more and more personal. And if you continue that to the point where you spend a lot of time meditating and connecting with your higher self, that connection will become absolutely intimate as your higher self expands itself and you start to integrate with your higher self, which is a part of you. You could say the super consciousness part of you. And here is your conscious mind, and here is your subconscious mind. And integration starts to occur when you start having these sorts of interests. Because a part of that interest is also taking interest in your own mind and your own life, and how it all works, how it all works, the spiritual reality.
Robert, we've got another question for you which relates to this, and it's from Tom Llewellyn, one of our group with Google Plus group. Quite a long question, so I'm going to post it in the chat section so you can read it as well. But I'll read it out to you first, and then I'll post it, and then you can read it yourself. It's his second question, but because it relates to where we are at the moment, I'll post it first. So Tom's question is, Robert, your technique of using jump leads attached to water pipes, etc., for psychic self-defense is very powerful indeed. Awesome innovation, he says. He says that he attaches a sheet of metal to the jump leads that are attached to the water pipes and place the sheet of metal over the part of the body that's affected, for instance, himself or a friend and so forth. He then says the energy of a neg may still be attached to the sheet of metal after it's been removed from the body, and depending on the power of the neg, they can hang around for some time before they are all drained away. So there's a little bit more to go yet. Do you know any way to speed up the process if the neg is powerful enough to hang around for some time, or how to protect yourself from it, as they can make unpleasant temporary house guests, obviously, yeah, especially if they've created subsidiary negs that can exist as long as the major neg is still in the country, he says, and not on some rain cloud in Africa. So I'm going to post that for you so you can read that again. If you haven't
got it, Steve. I've got it.
Chat window, yeah, you got it anyway. Okay.
It anyway.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
But that innovation like that, forget it. That's better. That's an area which you can also do with buying the grounding products, the grounding bed sheets that I was talking about.
Yeah.
You can buy little cables, and they have little pads that you can actually stick onto the body, which will give you a much more direct earth. And these are great, like if you've got arthritis in your left elbow, for example, if you put an electrically earth pad there with a cable going to the earth, of course, there, you will get much more powerful healing in that area there. And this is allowing your own body to heal itself because of how the grounding works. Now, removing a neg from a human body in such a way, great thinking, and that idea needs developing and experimenting with further. But you can liken a neg to, you know, when you have a minky blanket or a piece of cloth, fuzzy cloth that gets really staticky on dry weather, and you move this cloth like a minky blanket, and it crackles with the static. You only get this in dry weather. You get this crackly static in it. Now, obviously, there are millions of volts of static electricity in this big piece of cloth, this blanket or whatever. Now, you would think now, if you take this to a water tap and you turn the water on a little bit and you touch this rug to the tap and you earth it, you would expect that to go zap into earth. But it doesn't happen, because what is actually happening here is you have billions or trillions of little tiny filaments of thread in that blanket, and each of those is carrying a charge, and they are not all connected together because they insulate from each other, And so the only way you can drain that charge out of it is to go and lay it on the lawn if you have a lawn, or leave it there, and it's a damp lawn, so it's got a little bit of connectivity to the earth there, and it will, over a period of minutes or hours, it will slowly leach away and become less staticky. You can get rid of it, but it takes time. Now, the similar principle appears to apply with a neg. When a neg is with a person, if it's attached on the surface, over the surface of your energy body, which is very much like there's a field of energy that covers the surface of the Earth, which is caused by 7,000 lightning strikes a minute, which hit the planet Earth. It's a lot of lightning. And when a lightning bolt hits the Earth, the energy spreads out over the surface of the Earth and the ocean instantly. It's like a millimeter above the surface. And that energy goes up every tree, up every wall and roof on the outside and on the inside as well. And as well as going up over the surface of your body. It's a natural field, scientifically known about. I call it a perpetually dissipating field, because scientists say that if lightning stopped hitting the Earth, this field of energy would dissipate over about an hour. Now, removing an entity, what the sheet of metal can do and the electrical connections can do is to drain, you could say, negative energy out of you. Because negative entities, when they attach to you and try and move in, they generate like a negative, like a dark energy inside of a person that builds up. And that is something you can drain away by electrically grounding yourself. And but actually catching one, you can catch a negative entity, you can catch a demon. It's possible to catch one. Now, a magician would catch an entity like that and put it into a crystal, and that can be done. But it takes quite a high level of magical knowledge to do that. So you've got your homework set out for you to do that, but it's very effective. Another way I know of you can catch a demon is to trap it using the garden hose method on a lawn or on a surface of any area. When you're under an attack, you put yourself in the circle of hose, and then you have somebody will reach out and turn it on. You turn on the right hose, so running water's going around you, and then you step out of that, and knowing that the entity can't cross that running water, and then you shrink the hose down until you're keeping it touching the ground, of course, so it can't get away, and you shrink it down till it's about that far across, a foot across, and then you gush a lot of running water through that, and you effectively demanifest the neck. Now, out of these things that do work experientially over and over again, they're repeatable and effective. That's why I put them in my book, and that's why I'm using them. I find something that might be great in theory, but if it doesn't work in practice in the field, I drop it. I won't use it. It's useless. It's like saying this prayer or that prayer. I've almost got myself killed trying out some of these contemporary countermeasures that don't work. It's like, just because you say this prayer or that prayer, it doesn't stop it. It keeps on going. It does make us feel better. It's emotionally comforting, saying the Lord's Prayer or the 23rd Psalm and that. And I've done these things myself, but it doesn't actually work in the sense that Stephen's face is up now.
Yeah, Rob.
Stephen, you're on main screen.
No, you should be back on in a second. Just
okay.
Thank you very much for sharing that insight, and I hope that for you, Janie, and for Tom, that really does help to answer your questions. We've got a couple of other related questions, and then I'm going to bring some questions in from the Hangout group as well.
Just quickly before you
you
go on, Stephen.
Yeah.
One last quick point to that. I would suggest if you do have problems like that you actually create a Faraday cage, like a little tent, around the bed, made out of, that metal flywire you can get, insect screening metal. If you make a metallic tent Faraday cage around the bed and then strongly earth that, as well as having bed sheets to expose your body to it, and have a salt bath, so you have salt on your skin to increase your conductivity, that would be the best that you can actually do for draining negative entities. And it still may take time, depending on the nature of the entity, because of the huge range of them, many, many different types, all with different properties.
No, thank you very much, Robert. Really, really appreciate that answer. This is another link question. This is from another Robert. Is Wi-Fi, mobile phone radiation, and other electromagnetic field radiation harmful or disturbing when attempting to have an astral projection or out-of-body experience? If yes, what can you do about it?
I don't really know the answer to that question, but what I can give you is, because I've been teaching this to thousands of people over the years, I have, when I have classes with people who are learning astral projection and that, when I get people who start having problems, they can't get into an altered state or whatever, one of the first questions I ask is, do you have any electronic equipment running near your body where you're practicing? And the answer is usually 9 times out of 10 correct. Yeah, I've got a computer there, or it might be a television on the other side, or something running near the bed, or they might have the laptop running, or a lot of, some people have a bunch of power boards and cables and electronic devices sprayed out around the bed, and that will cause problems for some people. Now, trial and error there. You can try it with and without, but preferably, try it without, because it's really bad for your physical body and mental health to have a lot of electromagnetic radiation around you. If you sleep with a cell phone, like most people do, I have one as well. I use it as an alarm clock, but I put it as far as I can reach away from my fingertips from here, and that's the closest I allow. And I know that if I bring it closer to me, it will disturb my sleep. I just I don't feel right. It may be, just my imagination, but it does seem to affect.
Thank you, Robert. That's fantastic. Can we still hear you okay?
Yep, it's good.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. All right, we've got another question. Let me just switch to the questions for you. Coming back to the out-of-body experience, it's again from Robert as well. I'm sure you get asked this hundreds and hundreds of times. Do you have any personal technique that you use to quickly astral project anytime you like?
Personally, yeah. What I do is, usually sitting in this chair, I put my trusty pillow, and I place my trusty pillow between my shoulders and the chair. So I've just got a little bit of support on my neck, and get myself comfortable, put a footstool out so my legs are raised, otherwise you get swollen ankles if you spend a long time. And I put myself into an altered state of consciousness, which only takes 30 seconds or so. And then I spend time just settling and letting my mind relax. Your mind is like a big message reminder service, all this activity going on. And when you try to stop it, it likes to wind down a little bit. Another way is to take a nap. Sitting in this position, you won't sleep for long, and then you wake up and you'll be deeply relaxed. But, and that's one I use a lot, actually. I'll just take a short little nap, 10, 30 minutes might go by, and then I'll wake up. And as I wake up, I'm aware that I'm waking up, and I hold that deeply relaxed, quiet state. And then I do a bit of energy work on my brow chakra, which triggers clairvoyance, particularly in my case, astral sight. So I start having visions and things like that. And then with an act of will, I shift into the vision. I may deliberately focus my clairvoyance on something or some person. And a lot of my astral projection is used for distance healing and distance help for people, depending on what the problem is. And I shift into the vision wherever I want to be, whether it's in the astral plane, something interesting, or in real time. If I'm giving healing, for example, I get a photograph of a person, I memorize that, and then I call that image of their face up here, and maybe the room they're in, and then I shift into that room. Now, that usually works, and I'll appear there with them. If that doesn't work, I will summon them into my presence. And what you're summoning is an astral copy of them. They may be awake, they may not even know about this, but you summon an astral copy of them, and then I will shift out of body and do the healing or banishment or whatever's needed for them. Various kinds of ways you can help people in that sense here. But yeah, shifting into a vision is probably my primary way of doing out-of-body experience. But of course, that's not really an easy thing to learn if you don't have the abilities to get into an altered state.
Robert, have you got a training session coming up where people can join your group and learn techniques?
Well, I have my Mastering Astral Projection course on my main website, which is astraldynamics.com, and that has about 30 hours of video with me teaching the ins and outs of astral projection and all the nitty-gritty. It takes a lot of explaining, and we just updated that to all high-def videos and that.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Good shape. Now, I also have another course which is done through a different partner, beginning at the middle of January, I think, and that's found at glidewing.com, and that's called the Practical Astral Projection Intensive.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah.
That's a 5-week live course. We have a lot of instructional videos there in a similar material, similar to the Astral Projection Mastery course. But this has live feedback and interaction with me on a forum. It's a bit like this,
yes,
where you can ask questions and I will problem solve and be creative and come up with solutions and that. We have a lot of success with that. And that's 5 weeks of doing like 2 hours of work a day is required, and it's all about the work. This is not an information workshop. This is all about doing the work. We use the Journeys Out of the Body Hemisync CDs as training guides, and you will do 1 hour a day listening to these CDs and learning how to stay conscious in those states, working from conditions A, B, C, and D until you can hold the full mind-awake body asleep state. And we teach energy work and also astral projection exit techniques. But the entire focus is on getting out of body and getting back into your body and remembering it. That's the whole focus of the workshop. The Astral Projection Mastery course, that is much broader in the scope of the information it gives. It gives all the training as well, but
thank you very much again, Robert. We're coming up to our last sort of 15, 16 minutes live, and I've got one more question from the advanced questions, and then I'm going to bring in the online group, and they can speak their questions out if they like. So just this last question, and this is again from Tom, and I hope Robert that Bruce's answer for you was able to help. I certainly think taking training and putting hard work in is really the real key. But certainly do try the quick techniques. Anything's worth exploring. So Tom Llewellyn has a question. He's about to start a new development group, and he says that at some point in the course of the group, he would like to explore how to deepen. This comes back to the subject of today's and yesterday's discussions. How to deepen our connection with specific, I think he means ascended masters and angels. And do you have any advice about how to go about this? I know that you talked about that a little at the beginning of this session and yesterday, but maybe we could relook at that just briefly again, and then I'd like to bring the group in.
That's the big question. It's, I mean, a quick technique for astral projection, which involves in a sitting position, taking a nap, but in an uncomfortable position so that you'll wake up already in a deep orbit state. That's a shortcut, which is very workable. But the question you're talking about there is one word for that. It's called evocation. Evocation, which is the ability to evoke a spirit. And that requires ritual magic of some kind. There's lots of different forms of it, hermetic magic. Now, if you're really interested in doing that, there's 2 books written by a genius called Franz Barden. I'm sure you've heard of his work. The first one is called Initiation into Hermetics. It's the standard training guide worldwide, for serious occult training. And you'll find elements of that in my work as well. Now, once you've completed the lessons in that, the second book is called Practices for Evocation, and it teaches you how to evoke spirits. And it has a set of spirits in there which are specifically, you could say, lined up with agreements to enable them to be evoked by beginners in training. Now, one thing you need to know about, you may have already tried this book and all, the names of these spirits, which is very, very important, the actual names when you're invoking a spirit, you need to know the real name. The names given in the book, Practices of Magical Evocation, are not correct because that is given to the masses. Now, to protect those names, there's another little book you can get hold of, which is an interpretation of the decoding of those names, so you can get the actual names that need to be used for those practices to work. Now, as far as I know, I don't do a lot of evocation myself. I know a fair bit about it, but as far as I know, what I've told you is accurate. You need that little decode. And if you Google it, you'll find it. I forget the name of it. It's eluding me at the moment. I've got a copy in my hard drive somewhere.
That's okay, Robert. You can let us know later on. We'll post it up on the Google Plus page for the event, and I'll make sure that we'll put on the YouTube.
Now, evoking ascended masters, you're up there with masters and angels as well. Evoking them can be done, but you will find whether it's worth doing it or not, because a true master will not give you very much information. Not what you think it would be. You think you make the breakthrough, you finally get to talk to a master, an angel, and you find it smiles at you and says, "She knows it's a number," and leaves. And that's what a master or an angel will tend to do if you encounter them. They will give you. You don't need to ask.
Can I ask?
They know what you need, and they will tell you exactly what they think you need to know, and then they will leave.
Can I throw in a spanner again into this as a sort of follow-on question? There are a lot of people that claim to be channeling ascended masters. Some of them are doing it very publicly, and they're publishing through big, publishing houses. They do the workshops, the speaking tour, and so forth. And then you've got small groups, maybe very innocently, or maybe very, how can I say it? They're going in with the right spiritual sense, the right feeling in their hearts, and someone is channeling information for them, supposedly from an ascended master. Do you think maybe these people are deluding themselves, or is it just a fashion, or is it something else?
I think all three of those statements are correct. Some of these people are deluding themselves. Now, I'm sure most of them are channeling a spirit.
Okay.
But as we approached last night, a lot of spirits, there is a huge range of spirits very close to the earth that crave contact with human beings. And they will tell you anything you want in order for you to listen to them and to let them in. They will pretend to be anything you like. Now, I have yet to come across a spirit, a channeled spirit. I've come across some honest ones before. I have not come across a spirit that has a superior level of knowledge to my own, in an experiential, practical knowledge.
Yep.
And if I've asked spirits, and I've done this many times, questioning spirits and have claimed this and claimed that, and I've asked them things which I can prove to be a fact, techniques, things like that, and maybe things I haven't released yet, which are repeatable and workable, and they're clueless. They have no idea what I'm talking about. I mean, and talking about other things as well, well, I hear a lot of beautiful philosophy, and that's spouted by a lot of spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And man, they can talk. You ask them a simple question, and you get two pages back of all this stuff. Some of that's beautiful philosophy, but I am always suspicious, and I think everybody needs to be. Was it Jesus that said, "Test your spirits"? That's wisdom.
Yeah.
Testing a spirit. If you're in communication with spirit, the first test I would do is ask the spirit to go away for a set period of time. Go away for 1 calendar month, and then return here on January the 1st. And I will, at this same time, and I will communicate with you. Now, a good, honest spirit will abide by your wishes and your free will, and will do that. Any other spirit, and this is like 99% of the spirits I've dealt with, they can't wait. They'll be back the next day saying, "You've got a big mission here. We can't wait this. It's important. We've got to keep doing this." They're not abiding by your wishes, and that tells you something. Big red flag goes up, over various things here. And you can actually extrapolate a lot about the nature of spirit by testing the spirit in various ways. There's things you can do, things you can ask it to do. And there are good, honest spirits out there, but there is something in the world. I've got to say this, Stephen.
Yeah, well, please go on. Sorry.
It's well known about and talked about, and most people don't understand it. It is called the middle plateau. I'm sure some of you have come across this term. When you leave the Earth in the physical reality here we are in now immediately above us, this is in the real-time human zone. It is in the physical universe itself and extends up into the astral, you could say. This is an analogy. This is the concept to explain something, right? This is called the middle plateau, and it's described as when the master starts to ascend, he passes through this realm of the middle plateau, which is crawling with mischievous and deceiving spirits and demons. And as he goes through this, and these demons bring him all these riches and jewels and try to, con him into this, come and buy this, there's still more, do anything. The master says, neti, neti, which in Tibetan, Sanskrit I think it is, means not this, not that. And if you continue your course, you will finally come out into the light, where you will be standing with other masters and angels. But this is like a fail-safe mechanism which is around the world here, which we all have to move through before we can actually, you could say, ascend to a point where you are proven by demonstrating your capability of getting through this, of controlling your ego to the point where you can move through these layers of deception and intrigue and into the light.
Again, Robert, from yesterday, Robert, you were talking about initiation. So again, are you talking about a process of initiation?
Initiations can be a part of this, but I mean, a good analogy here to what I mean by the middle plateau, which is not my term, made up, but a good analogy is real life in the real world that you all know. Now, you get on the internet, for example, and walk down the street. There's people on the side of the road. Come buy one of these, have one of these. Yet there's still more. Come and look at this. There's people knocking on your door trying to sell you things. There's Jehovah's Witnesses, God bless them, knocking on your door, and Mormons and people like that trying to sell you religion to bring you in. Come and believe like we do. And, all these things you get. And on the internet, you've got all these traps and people trying to rob you of money and get you involved in this and that. And lots of scams everywhere. But the spiritual realms are very much like this, like real life, which you have all learned to navigate successfully. Common sense mainly. You learn to navigate that. Learning to navigate the subtle realms is very much a matter of common sense, which you can relate to normal life. As I said yesterday, if a complete stranger walks up to your house at night and knocks on your door and says, "Hi, I'm here, I'm a human being. Can I come in? Where's the fridge? I'm thirsty. Where can I sleep?" Just moves in. You would not let a complete stranger into your house. Nobody here. You'd be a fool to do that. And
Robert,
why?
can I
Because
come
you
back in
don't know
again if
who
that's
that
okay?
person is or what they're going to do. You don't know who they are. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same with spirits. You don't know what they're going to do. You have to test them out. A few simple tests.
Robert, thanks for letting me come back in. We're fast running out of time for the live session. We do need to cut off from broadcasting live at past. So we've got 5 minutes left. I wanted to bring in a couple of our members who've joined us online in the Hangout and give them an opportunity to ask a couple of quick questions, but we will continue on within the Hangout once we've discontinued the live session, and those guys will be able to have a bit more of a chat with you privately. So we've got Stephanie and we've got Layla. Stephanie's asked about 6 or 7 questions, and I'm sorry to our live guests and to our guests viewing the YouTube session later that you won't get a chance to get these questions. But what we'll do, Robert, is hopefully bring you back as a guest very soon, and we'll bring some of those questions up to the fore earlier rather than later. We've got a couple of minutes left, Robert, so let me just bring Stephanie in. Stephanie, do you want to try and talk and maybe ask one question? Let's see if we can get some sound. No, we're not getting you. Not to worry. So what I'll do, Stephanie, is I'll ask one of the questions you've popped up, if that's okay, and then we'll try and bring you back in later. Okay. Really, it's to do with shielding again, Robert. And this is drugs and alcohol, their effects on the body, and how they affect our natural shielding. Do they prevent? Somebody else asked a question about what effect they might have on us having out-of-body experiences. What are your general thoughts about drugs and alcohol? In a minute, if you can answer within, to keep the answer quite short this time.
Okay, it's a dangerous area to go into, even with the herbal varieties and that. Now, 95% of people may have no problems if it's done correctly under guidance, like the ayahuasca, however you say that word, ceremonies and that. If that is done under the guidance of the proper shamanic psychologists, I know people that do this work, that can be done reasonably safely. But you will always get the one person in 100 or more that will have their first dose of this substance and have a full-on psychotic episode. I've known several people that when they've had their first toke of a marijuana joint, they wake up 3 months later in a mental institution. They have a full psychotic break. So there is, and common sense here as well. If you've tried some marijuana and things like that, you might know you handle that pretty well. You're probably pretty safe to try something like, herbal things, like ayahuasca, with some, surety if you're in good hands. But you always need to be a little bit careful and don't jump into something. If you've never tried any drugs before, try something milder first and see how that affects you.
Going to try and bring Robert. Going to try and bring Steph in again. See if her sound works. Let's see if you can.
Let's avoid it, Stephen.
Yeah. Should we avoid that for the moment?
I've never taken any drugs whatsoever.
All right. Well, we've got 1 minute left. Sorry, guys. I can't bring you in on the live session. We'll do this after we go off live. Robert, thank you so much again for joining us. I can't tell you how much I personally appreciate you giving your time this evening and this afternoon in the UK and this morning in the States. We've covered some really fascinating ground. We looked at your personal experiences. I think from your personal experiences you've derived a lot of wisdom. You've obviously produced your portfolio of work, which a lot of the public are very aware of, a lot of people aren't aware of. And this is a good forum to bring that forward in. You've talked about some of the events coming up. How can people again find you, Robert? How can they connect with you?
My main site with my programs is astraldynamics.com. My free website and forums has a lot of material free for downloading, and the big forums is at astraldynamics.org. And quickly before I finish here, I can't keep up with the chat on the side while I'm talking.
Not at all,
Because
Robert.
when I'm talking, I'm very involved with my higher self, and I go into a zone, and I can't keep up
It's
with
all right.
chat.
You need not worry about that. Yeah, yeah. Look, thank you again. We're going to shortly end, I think, the live
My
broadcast.
pleasure.
Yeah. Let me just check that the session's going to close. I might close the session for a little bit and come back in. So to all our guests, thank you for coming along. And if you do lose the session, I'll re-invite you, and we'll join each other in a standard meetup. So thank you again, Robert. It's been a pleasure having you as our special guest today. Thank you. Cheerio.